Welcome to Significant Brothers. I'm Brad.
I'm Chase.
I'm Cray.
I'm Anna.
And today we are talking about cult phenomena. Not like the spooky dooky cults, but the kind of things that arise in culture. And you're like, what? Does that make sense?
No.
That sounded like a
it's-
BoJack Horseman, like I'm a Ryan Seacrest type.
Exactly that.
Well, how would you guys describe cult phenomena?
I always felt like cult phenomena was something that was initially, when it was brought about, wasn't very popular, and then after years of it being unpopular, it gained popularity among the not mainstream crowd.
I think that's fair. I think it's kind of viewed as its own thing. Like, it's not necessarily popular, and there can be popular cult phenomena, but it'd never be perfectly mainstream. What I'm talking about is going to be specifically The Room, but kind of in the subcategory of audience participation movies. It's kind of like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I love Rocky Horror Picture Show.
It's not unpopular. It's kind of mainstream, but it's also definitely not mainstream, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I always understood it as something that didn't necessarily do well, maybe commercially at the get-go, but still has a really intense and loyal following.
Yeah,
Like, there's a few people who hold on to it like it's really popular to them, or like it's a big deal to them.
I guess, yeah, the really important part of this, especially with Rocky Horror, is like, it wasn't really popular, and it had a very strong, I guess, cult following. Like, there are the few people out of the hundreds of millions that are like, this is awesome, and everyone's like, it kind of sucks. But then once it kind of gains that status, people can appreciate it from afar. They don't need to be the Rocky Horror Picture type, but they can watch it on their own as a whole separate instance and appreciate it for what it is.
Have you guys ever seen Rocky Horror Picture Show?
I have
Nope,
not.
I have.
Have you been to like an audience interaction one?
I haven't, and I think that's why it's just not clicking for me 100%.
Chase, you have though, right?
It's amazing.
I guess for those of you guys who don't know, Rocky Horror Picture Show, it's classified as a midnight run show. Basically, it did very poorly, and like, okay, we're just gonna run it on midnights, and basically more and more people came at midnight, and it was getting so popular at those runs, and it just kind of took off from there. People were like, it's midnight, people don't care, let's talk during the movie. Let's throw popcorn at certain parts, and it developed this whole weird cult. There's a script online that you can read of what you're supposed to say when it happens. It's quite interesting. I would love to go to a showing of it in theaters.
Is it like every time Janet's on the screen you yell slut?
Yep, that's one of them.
Oh, okay. I love it so much.
Were you totally okay? So were you totally lost when you watched it, Chase?
The first time, yeah, I had no idea that they did
The
that.
first time.
Yeah, I went the next
Oh my
year.
gosh.
And it was great. I didn't, but here's the thing. I was like, I'll just take the ridicule and not wear a dress this time because I wasn't home for the weekend, so I didn't. And I wore one of your dresses. I hope you're okay with
You're
that.
lying.
I am.
Okay, so basically 14 years ago, almost 14 years ago, back in June of 2003, there was this movie that was getting released in LA, and it had one advertisement for it, basically, which was a billboard in LA that gave the time and where you could buy tickets for this movie called The Room. It had a very short run. It was a no-name director. No one really knew the actors in the movie. And it only lasted 2 weeks at the small theater it ran. And it grossed $1,800. in its 2 weeks. Basically, as it stands, and this is true of anyone who sees it, I have not seen the movie. I kind of wish I would have seen it for research purposes. But I want to see it with a group of people and in its purest form, just knowing what to do during the movie. But for all intents and purposes, The Room is a terrible movie. And that's why people love it. A couple of people who saw it, they had posted on it on message boards. And like, guys, you need to see this really, really terrible movie. The director meant for every reason to make this a very serious movie. People laughed and laughed and laughed during this movie. So it's posted on message boards. People need to see it. And they were able to convince the director to put it on another midnight screening in Los Angeles, and it was a packed theater for all these people that wanted to see this really, really, really bad movie. Some people bought a couple of reels of film and were able to get permission to air it other places. And yeah, it kind of has just taken off from there. NPR eventually was able to pick up on the fact that this was a terrible movie back in May 5 of 2006. And they're like, quote, during the movie, audience members shout at their own commentary about the dialogue, the sets, and notably the framed photograph of a spoon that inexplicably reappears. Each time this happens, the plastic spoons are thrown at the screen in the can-do spirit of Rocky Horror Picture Shows. And it's just, there's so many inconsistencies with this movie. It's terrible.
So, it was meant to be taken seriously?
It was meant to be taken very seriously.
Oh, so it was kind of like when Rod and Hot Rod was trying to raise money via a movie to get heart surgery for his dad, and then no one took that movie seriously.
That's probably the best way I've ever heard it put, except director Wiesel. I still think it probably hurts him a little bit on the inside that his movie wasn't taken seriously, but he's able to see for what it is now. He's been quoted, I always say you can laugh, you can cry, you can express yourself, but please don't hurt each other. And I think as long as people aren't attacking him personally, he's able to see, okay, people enjoy this movie as its own standalone cult thing. So, I guess the moral of the story is, even if you think you're the best and you make the worst, you still sometimes make the best.
Let me take you back to Detroit in the 1970s. There's a little company called DMC. Now,
Detroit,
you might think there should be a run in front of that, but what's that?
Democratic National
I was going to say Democratic National Convention.
So close. No, this was a little company started by a guy named John DeLorean. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Marty McFly's company.
Hush. So this was an upstart business that was originally... Some investors were Sammy Davis Jr. and Johnny Carson, who decided to throw money into this obscure car company that is called DeLorean Motor Company, DMC. So, October 1978, John DeLorean wants to start up the business, so he starts making a factory with intention of manufacturing cars, the DeLorean DMC, or just the DMC-12. And he wants to start manufacturing them in 1979. Everything goes wrong for him, and the first car doesn't come off the line until 1981. So, already a little bit behind schedule. But it's a cool car. So, pretty much, first off, the reason that I picked this before I go any further is because this is, I think, the epitome of a cult following for a car. Because, one, a lot of them weren't manufactured. Two, they look really cool. And three, they might be making a comeback? Let's go further.
The answer may surprise you.
So, first car comes off the line in late 1981. 1982, the company goes bankrupt. And it didn't help that John DeLorean himself was arrested involving a drug trafficking thing. Nobody wanted to buy the car. It turns out that it was an undercover FBI agent that posed as his cousin who tried to get him to sell drugs. The FBI
He really didn't know his cousin.
So he was initially arrested by the officer, and the officer wasn't going to arrest him, but John DeLorean had looked at him for a little bit too long. After a long, awkward pause, the FBI agent said, "What are you looking at, butthead?"
Oh my gosh.
None of that is true. But what is true is that he was arrested and then turned out to not have anything to do with the drug trafficking, but the bad press drove the already fragile company under. Nobody wanted to buy a car from him, and the company went bankrupt in 1982. 1985, we all know the fantastic movie Back to the Future Part 1 came out that featured a DeLorean that could go to the future and back in time, and then back to the future, where we get the name from. So in the span of 1981 and 1982, when the company ran, about 9,200 DMC-12s were manufactured. There were other models, but that was the first model, so they needed about 10,000 to break even. 10,000 to 12,000 didn't come close. But they came close, but they didn't get it, so you don't... the economy won't care if you get close. Anyway, so for those who aren't familiar with this beautiful car, gull-wing doors, the ones that fold out, not like the Lamborghini that fold up. Stainless steel body, in case you get a scratch, you don't have to worry about getting a new paint job, you just buff it out. Rear-mounted engine, automatic transmission, 0 to 60 in 10.5 seconds. It was intended to be sold for $12,000 in 1981 bucks, but ended up being sold for $25,000.
Oh,
wow.
More than double, which nowadays is like $66,000.
yeah.
So this is already like not a famously good car, not that fast. It's supposed to be a sports car, only fits 2 people. Okay, so why is it a cult phenomenon? Probably because it was in, like I said, we saw it in Back to the Future Part 1. It was a remarkably cooler car than the one that I just described to you, because the one in Back to the Future Part 1 had a Porsche 928 V8 engine versus the V6 engine that was in the original DeLorean, because that car, it couldn't do all the fun tricks that they wanted it to do in the parking lot at the Twin Pines Mall. At the end of Part 1, the car could fly. Real ones can't. At the end of Part 1, it uses Mr. Fusion for, instead of using plutonium, they use trash to do it. You can't put trash in your DeLorean nowadays, guys. I'm sorry. And at the end of Part 1, in between Part 1 and Part 2, it could inexplicably swap Claudia Wells out for Elizabeth Shue without anybody noticing. Except I noticed. No, actually, a lot of people noticed. How to do that. You can put Claudia Wells in your car. You're not going to get Elizabeth Shue. You're going to get arrested, probably. Also, the car in Part 1, it has this one feature where if you hit 88 miles per hour, you see some serious shit. You don't see that. You don't see that. You get a ticket maybe in the mail, but so suffice to say, the one that we saw in the movie is not the same that we see in real life, and because of limited demand, it was the demise of the company, and the cars became an icon for nerds who like that movie. Moral of the story is, you too can punch out Biff at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
So, there's this band that formed in 1965. It's called the Grateful Dead. Have you guys ever heard of them? Listen to them?
Knowledge.
No, I am not a Deadhead. But I'm a fan of Deadheads. I think they're quite interesting. I listened to them for the first time ever when I was doing this research. They're pretty good. I could get on board with them. Not with the Deadheads, but I could listen to them every now and then.
Sometimes.
Yes. I think we've mentioned them on the cult episode.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I talked about them.
On Wikipedia, it said they fused elements of rock, psychedelia, jazz, country, folk, bluegrass, blues, reggae, and space rock. So, I mean, there's something for everybody. There's a biographer of Jerry Garcia who's, he was the lead singer. And he said that the shows were full of transcendental music movements that move the body and enrich the soul. The reason they had, like, such a big following was because they always changed their set list. Like, no show was ever the same. And so they had about 3 to 5 like performance set lists wherever they traveled. They followed them and they'd attend every concert, and in like some places they started having like several concerts at every venue. So, you know, it just started off with like some fans selling some t-shirts and veggie burritos outside the concerts, which is actually true. Like on every source I looked at, they always talked about veggie burritos. And then eventually they made a special section for the fans to tape the concert. If you like ask a Deadhead like what's your favorite one, like they can find it online and listen to it. And so like a lot of them have listened to like every concert.
Really?
That's
Every
really
concert?
incredible.
Yeah. Most concerts, I would say. I wouldn't guarantee every. Maybe so. I'm sure some have. They all like were just like really good friends because they'd always just be at the same concerts with each other. And they would like even try to like help them out if they couldn't get in the concert. Like if they couldn't get a ticket, there would sometimes there's like a certain sign they would hold up to like try and get people to sneak them in. And a sign would say, "I'm in need of a miracle." And then people would try to get in. Like people that would work at the concert or like concert goers would try to help them in.
Whoa.
Yeah. And also these concerts were like known for having lots and lots of drugs. So like there was also, I mean, lots and lots of overdoses and stuff. And so there was a special section at each concert, and there would be an arch of yellow balloons, and that was for the sober people because they were trying to get rid of drugs at the concerts, one concert at a time, trying to have a safe space for them.
Was this a specific like subgroup within the Grateful Dead fans, or?
I think so. Moral of the story: don't do drugs and eat veggie burritos.
That's a good moral.
That's a good moral.
I can do those.
So, Cray, what have you learned?
I learned that I should eat veggie burritos.
Oh wow, I'm so glad.
So I looked at the cult following that surrounded the book, The Sorrows of Young Werther. It was published in 1774 by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe.
There's that high school German.
Yep.
Oh.
It's spelled Goethe, but it's pronounced Goethe. And so this book is loosely autobiographical. It's an epistolary novel in which the main character, Werther, sends letters to his friend, Wilhelm. So it's just the way he narrates the story is just you're reading letter after letter of him sending it to his friends. It's not a super happy book, as the title suggests. So basically, Werther, he falls in love with this girl called Charlotte, but she is engaged to a man named Albert, who is 11 years her senior, which is fine. That's not the problem. I'm cool with it. But Werther sort of continues to fall in love with Charlotte and like harbor this very close friendship with her. So every day that she sees her, his sorrow sort of continues to grow, knowing that he will never be with her. But, you know, he still really enjoys seeing her. He ends up leaving town because his sorrow is too great. He ends up coming back. The reasons are unimportant to the story. And he finds out that Charlotte and Albert are now married. So his sorrows have grown exponentially.
I hate that guy.
Yeah, Albert sucks. So he writes a letter to Albert asking for some guns under the pretext that he's quote-unquote going on a journey. And basically, in Werther's mind, the only way to get rid of this situation is somebody in this, I guess, love triangle, even though he's not really in it. The only way to get rid of this is to get rid of one of the three people in this triangle. And seeing as how he's incapable of murder himself, he just decides to off himself. So, yeah. So he shoots himself, and then he dies 12 hours later. So that's kind of like even worse. Yeah, I know. And then, and no clergy, Charlotte, Albert, none of them are at his funeral. So, very sad.
Wow, that's so sad.
Yeah,
How did
very
Albert
sad.
get his guns back?
I don't know. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he got a dog to go get them.
So, Craig,
I don't.
why is this? Why did you bring this up in our cult following episode?
Well, this book made Goethe extremely popular, like almost overnight. It was, fun fact, one of Napoleon Bonaparte's favorite books. He took it on his campaign to Egypt with him. And this cult following started after the publication of the book and was at some point called like a quote-unquote Werther fever. So young men across Europe started to dress in yellow pants and blue jackets like the main character. And also, there was a reported rise in suicides after the book was published.
No.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
as like some of the
Oh my
first known
gosh.
cases of copycat suicides. For those who don't know, copycat suicides are basically when you try to emulate a suicide that you came across in some form of media or you came across in your own local knowledge. And studies have shown that suicides do increase after a well-publicized suicide, but the exact results aren't always consistent. Sometimes people think a certain suicide will increase a lot of other suicides, but doesn't always. And, researchers are always debating the reasons. But that's the basic gist of it, is suicides did go up after the publication of this book. So Goethe, on the effects of this book on young men who could relate to the sort of sensitive character of Werther and unrequited love, said, "It must be bad if not everyone was to have a time in his life when he felt as though Werther had been written exclusively for him." So he sort of realized, I mean, I'm not saying like he knew what he is publishing or something, but he's saying, yeah, I can see why a lot of people relate to this book, and perhaps if they're in the wrong mindset or in a certain scenario where their love is not requited, it would affect them emotionally and perhaps physically. So it even took a pretty emotional toll on himself, to which he said about the book, "That was a creation which I, like the pelican, fed with the blood of my own heart."
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good quote. So as a result of this Werther fever, the book and Werther's dressing style was banned in Leipzig, which is in Germany, and the book was also banned in Denmark and Italy.
Wow.
Wow. Good. Sounds like it brought nothing but pain.
Yeah, but it made him popular, so something good came out of it.
Yeah. No, I don't think
It's worth it.
I don't think censoring literature is really effective or a good idea.
No, if anything, it makes it more popular.
Yeah.
The moral of the story is yellow pants are pretty cool.
Hey guys, if you would like to follow us on Twitter or tweet at us, you can find us at Significant Bros.
And if you want to keep up with all of our significant happenings, you can sign up for our newsletter at tinyletter.com/significantbrothers.
If you want to listen to us, you can find us on YouTube, iTunes, Podbean, or whichever podcast app you use.
If you need to email us at sigbrotherspod@gmail.com.
I even have an audio transcript that I'll reenact. It's me, your cousin Marvin. Marvin DeLorean? You know that new Coke that you're looking for? We'll try some of this.